to tell you that the purpose of this forum is the 3 steps that I would like to voice. First of all, we would like to initiate the tradition of holding such forums on an annual basis. And at these forums, we will be discussing what's going on in the educational sphere. And then we will have the reflections on the products to the state service of quality in education in Ukraine, and what is to be done in order to have all the possible improvements in this process. The second task is the following. We have here school directors, teachers, representatives of the territorial communities, as well as the territorial representatives of the state service of the quality of education in Ukraine. That's why you have your vision, what's going on in the educational sphere in the level of the community. And thirdly, today actually we're closing the research project that actually has been very friendly to us. It's a part of our big family, and we get together here to thank them for their efforts, for the cooperation and partnership, for all the outputs proposed to the educational sector with regards to the methodological recommendation, monitorings that we conducted together. Exactly this is the purpose. And today, after our panel discussion, we'll have a good chance to work in the work groups, and each work group will have the opportunity to see what are the findings and conclusions as the outcome of this project. Once again, I'd like to thank all the participants. We know pretty well each other. We communicate perfectly, and it's very good because we believe that this will be the tradition to get together on the annual basis. Starting our forum, I'd like to address you with the following. The war in this country is ongoing. Actually, we have very many military soldiers who perish, and also our colleagues amongst them, our students amongst them. Generally speaking, Ukrainian citizens are amongst them. The point is that the enemy decided to disturb our normal, peaceful life. And colleagues, you know pretty well that the experts of our Marka Bilkovskого, who worked in the search project, he was very devoted to his work, and he died because he actually encountered the hostilities of the aggressor, Russia. That's why I would like now to pay the tribute to all those who perished. Thank you. Friends, we start our agenda, and I'd like to invite for the opening remark our colleagues, and I invite the Minister of the Education and Science, Mr. Oksan Lisovy. Also, the head of the project in Ukraine, Tanya Levy Sanford Amar. As well as the head of the Office of Integrity of the National Agency on Preventing Corruption, Natalia Chernets. Thank you. Mr. Minister, thank you very much that you are with us at this forum. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, esteemed participants. It's great to be here with this community that get together to discuss a very interesting topic, that is education, quality of education. We understand that this context, why we raise this issue for discussion, is very important. Ruslan has detailed you on what is the environment. We have security challenges for our educators, teams, for our families, children. And it's true, and it distracts and forces us to put priorities slightly differently. And for this certain period, no doubt, the issue of quality in the educational sector actually earlier has not been in the focus. Now security issues is a priority. We should provide any process, we should reinstate this process, and we put the objectives as the ministry, and for us it's important to monitor certain indicators as the shelter provision for the educational facilities. And in this context, the issue of quality has been not in our focus. I'm very thankful for the state service of the quality of education in Ukraine. Also, I'm thankful to the search project that they allowed us to put the accent on this issue, and they actually set up the dialogue. And we should not drop the topic of quality in the list of our priorities. And we have very good deliberations. As of today, we have conducted a number of research and studies that has been implemented, and I believe that there will be the follow-up of this project. Today actually is the closing day of the search project, but for us it's very important to have in future such like support. We face many more tasks and objectives. Also, we are talking over the political will, and the political will is that the education will be prioritized, and it will be one of the priorities. Priority number 2 is education. Priority 1 is defense. So the second ranking priority is education. What do we mean? That, for example, 2024 budget, and actually what has been highlighted by the President of Ukraine, by the government, by the minister, actually this testifies to the fact that the budget will support our objectives. We know we had some problems with the school buildings, with the textbooks, and we realize that today it's important that to give the push for the positive developments in this process. And also we have 500,000 of subventions to this educational sector. And this budget has already been voted by the parliament. MPs fully supported it. And security issues have been in our focus as well. Also, 2.5 billion hryvnias is allocated from the budget in order to maintain the shelter facilities, basement facilities. And we understand that actually in the beginning of the war, actually we had a very shallow budget for our textbooks printing. And also we have the subvention for the modernization of the school catering and school buses. But for us it's very important to have new school and new textbooks. And quality issues is one of the priority issues in this regard. All studies and research is conducted in the framework of the search program. It will be the basement for the follow-up positive developments of the educational sector in this country. We have very high ambitions and plans. We are planning to give a full recovery to to this country, thanks to our efforts and thanks to our work, and without this it will not be possible. Quality issue should be the fundamental issue in this process, and I'm fully sure that the intellectual community that is working on this topic, educators, leaders, teachers, managers, I believe that they have the full capacity actually to give the miracle of recovery for educational sector in Ukraine. I wish you the fruitful work in the framework of this forum to have fruitful discussion and be inspired for the future objectives implementation. Thank you very much. My thanks go to the search program. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for such inspiring words. No doubt we'll be trying to have the best reflections to your wishes and friends. As it has been said by Mr. Roxanne, the search project has played a very important role in the system of quality assurance in this country. And currently, we are talking over the partnership and cooperation that has been laid back to, that was laid back to 2018 and is still ongoing. Actually, we became a family, but in each sound Ukrainian family, no doubt there were some disputes sometimes, there were debates on this or that issue, we had quarrels, but the most important that we have pursued only one objective. Our objective is to build up the ideal model of school where students will feel free, the students will feel secure, and where students could build up one's personality for the purpose of the future growth of our country. We are very thankful to all of you, and actually my recollections go back, and I believe that probably the search program will be extended. Mrs. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Morning. Thank you so much. I realize I am probably the only native English speaker here this morning, so I'll give you a moment to put on your headphones as I've had to have mine on. Minister, Mr. Gorak, it's a pleasure to be with you today. But I also have to say it's a little bit sad because this is our final event together on this particular initiative. But I do hope that it is not the final work that we will be doing together. We always have hope that we'll be able to continue. I'm so proud, though, that we have been able to work with you over the past 5 years, I think, already 5 years, and that we've been your main partner and the main partner for the Ministry of Education on the quality assurance reform. And I think it's especially telling because this started as a very small initiative. And it's developed into a full-scale reform where we designed the reform, we developed the reform, implemented it, piloted it, rolled out. And so it became something much bigger than we first imagined back in 2018. I think everybody here knows that reform is neither quick nor easy. It's always much more difficult than we imagine. And I think reform of quality assurance is something that we won't see the results for a very long time. That's a difficult task, especially in the context that you have now. It's always a difficult task, but with the challenges that Ukraine has now, waiting for the results of a reform, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice. And I must say that I'm always impressed, really, by Ukrainians when we can come here after an air raid last night. I know most people are quite used to this, But to see smiling faces and people being enthusiastic about their jobs and about changes that are being made in the country. And it's with this kind of attitude that you will prevail, certainly, over the enemy. And you will be building a country that is worthy of all of the sacrifices that have been made. At this point in our partnership, I don't want to say the end of our partnership, but at this point in our partnership where this particular initiative has come to an end, I think it's worthwhile to take a step back and just look at what we've achieved together, because I think it's truly impressive, all of the things that we have managed to do. And that's why I have my paper here. I have a whole inventory of all of the deliverables and products we do. Don't worry, it's a long list, but I will not speak for very long. Of course, we started at the national level, but we also worked at the local level and exactly with schools as well on the quality assurance reform. Starting at the national level, we've been working together to ensure that the regulatory framework is correct, that it fits the Ukrainian context, and that you have the foundation in terms of legislation to build this reform. We've also been working together on the capacity of the state service itself, because we understand we're just a project. We understand that you have to continue this reform and that you need to remain the highly professional, competent institution with all of the capacity that you are now, but you need to be the leader in the future. And that's why we have spent so much time working with you, investing in trainings, and developing various learning practices for you as well as the territorial branch offices. We've also spent a great deal of time looking at research and needs assessments. We've conducted several of them, and I think, as the minister mentioned, the state service now has a body of knowledge on incredibly important issues to Ukrainian education, on the needs of children in rural areas, on the needs of children that are IDPs, and even those that are studying abroad. This is incredibly important information to make evidence-based decisions for the future. Third, we've worked side by side with the state service to test and roll out the quality assurance national scale in school education. We have introduced institutional audits and scaling them across the country. I think this is one of our most proud achievements. To me, this puts a level of quality assurance in the hands of those that actually are benefiting from the system, in the hands of principals and teachers, of parents, and of students, of course, that are the final beneficiary. This inventory takes us up until the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which of course changed all of our lives and of course changed our work. For me, it was a small relief that we were able to reorganize our work in a way that started to answer some of the challenges posed by war. So we were able to pivot fairly quickly to start to work with teachers so that they could understand how to work in the new context of war. I'm especially proud that we were able to develop a diagnostic instrument to gauge learning loss, something I think that the entire world has been concerned about from the time of COVID, but something I think that the rest of the world cannot possibly begin to fathom the challenge that you have here in Ukraine after 2 years of a pandemic, followed by a full-scale invasion and an ongoing war, and the circumstances that you have to face every single day. These tests are now on the All Ukrainian Online School, and these are the only instrument now available to help schools assess learning loss. I hope this is something that partners, if you are here, are able to help the state service continue to do, because this kind of ongoing assessment is incredibly important. Finally, I want to say, when we look at different countries and the development of different countries, I think it's very tempting to focus on the most emergent issues that are in front of you. You have a war. You have sacrifices every day. We talked about, and thank you for that, people that we have lost. These are emergent issues that none of us can ignore. But the fact that you are thinking about children with special needs, that you are thinking about people with who are the most vulnerable in your country, this is a sign of great maturity of a country, of advanced development. And to me, again, this is a country that is really intent on serving its citizens and investing in its future. And this is a country that is really worth fighting for. So thank you very much for all of your hard work, for all of your partnership, for all of you that have participated in the trainings and in the development of these products. I think that all of you are contributing to the betterment of Ukraine. Thank you.
We are very grateful to you for such kind words. In fact, in your words, whatever you said about institutional development and institutional capacity, it is very exact, because together with the research project, we worked not only on our project, but also we worked over training of our experts to work immediately with our colleagues in territorial subdivisions, and this is great work to be done at the very beginning of establishment of such big institutions. Thank you, Tanya. We continue, and I would like to say a few words that recently we signed a memorandum about cooperation with National Agency of Prevention of Corruption, headed by Mr. Novikov, and sincerely, and he said, in terms of main, probably, or the main feature or soft skills that should be in school, this is dignity of a child which is formed in school system. But this dignity is not possible without academic integrity and integrity in general. So today, at our event, we have Miss Irina, and the floor is yours. I greet you all. I'm very glad that today we have very complicated times. And continuing the words of my colleagues, we have a war, which is the war for our future. What is the mission of the National Agency for Corruption Prevention? About integrity of power and integrity of the public. We work in many tracks. But the great hope is laid on the youth, because until 25 years old, so value carcass is made, and during this time you can change something and input certain other levels of consciousness. So we work for this, first of all, with the schools, with the healthcare facilities. So we started the project Transparent School, and we see here a few ambassadors of this project. I will tell you a few words about this project. So these are three works, three tracks. This is formal, informal education to work with the school children, partners, and we elaborated a large number of materials about anti-corruption and integrity, and also other educational products. So we work with the teachers in our educational platform of NA-PC. We have the courses for the teachers, but any training for the sake of training we wouldn't work if we will not change the medium. If we are talking about integrity, academic integrity, and being beyond out the box of the room, then if you meet this signs of absence of integrity, and children just meet the adults who are not their relatives, and they may see other standards of behavior. So if at this moment There will be no change of medium, and if at this moment the child will not get into integrity medium, it will be a sort of breakage of the template. So I'm sure that you heard about our Mr. Ruslan mentioned about the director of this pilot school because and Educational Navigator includes 5 chapters, which will help the manager of schools to build integrity of the medium and safe medium. There is algorithm on forming of parental community, work with the children, on involvement of funding, other bureaucratic procedures that may seem complicated, but also they are explained in and within framework of our cooperation with the memorandum with the state service on education quality assurance. All the schools of Ukraine will be taken care of. So now we start from the 5 first schools. The pilot will become within the stage of a normal school functioning, and this project will help to our children not only to hear the word integrity, but to accept this values, and to be our new future. Thank you for the cooperation. We thank you for cooperation, and I'm convinced and not only hope that when we declared the ABCDE, we declared it as a live book which would constantly would be changed and with addition of best practices, and I'm pleased that you are one of the first decided to add your chapter, and we call upon our partners and colleagues and other civil servants that you should reflect yourself in part of quality assurance in terms of schools. So we thank you, Ms. Irina.
Друзі, перед тим, як ми перейдемо до панельної дискусії,
Friends, when we will pass to panel discussion, let me say a few words in terms of our presentation, and I would like to pay your attention on several main points in our activity.
чи силою думки? Маєте? О, дякую вам. Супер. Супер.
Colleagues, let me, from the start, you all remember how the reform has started of the secondary and medium education started. What has been done there, and how the evaluation of the results? This is external independent assessment, how the state attestation been done. Many of you know about this, and probably all of you agree that the system that has been built in the part of evaluation of the work of schools was not satisfactory. Or was satisfactory? How do you think? Not satisfactory. Since it was not satisfactory, we feel that we need changes to change our sacred duty to create a new system would in reality evaluate whether the principal of the school infringed or didn't infringe some rule. So it was, and how to bring it to responsibility. We needed to change the system so that it would evaluate the progress and stimulate to the development each school based on the opportunities they have. So we said that the systemic approach to quality assurance of education was absent. When we gathered and it was discussed, we looked into the acting system. The former system was created in the Soviet Union in order to where on top the decision was taken, it was coming down to the bottom, and the inspection would come and supervise how this decision was implemented in every school. And that system doesn't work. However, it is so deep in our minds that in independent Ukraine, 20 years we lived within these rules, and we couldn't change anything. So it was challenge number one, in order that the old Soviet system would be rethought. And we worked a lot, and we gone the way of creation transformation of state inspection of education establishments into state service of education quality assurance. And now you're the witnesses of, and you are the people who are involved to this transformation. You did all the best to contribute its share of knowledge, its share of talent and soul into this transformation. It was not a simple period. We worked so long how the system should be built. And we went the way of elaboration or authors, technique of SQEua, Mahila, business school or methodology of building clientele roles. This is the service, and within the framework of its projects, you can suggest share values to every subject of education activity. And if you look at our products, and we are now focusing our attention on the system of internal quality assurance and external quality assurance, then systems. So we say what we give to the state and to the community and to the school, and of course for the pupils. We had a very ambitious goal, and some philosophers were criticizing us that there is no ideal school, but we declare this notion. Our ambitious goal is to build such an ideal school. And you know, at the very beginning, we were gathering in big groups and starting to reflect what is the ideal school. By the eyes of children, it was something else, like by the eyes of parents. By the eyes of teachers, it was different by the eyes of civil servants. And we've seen ideal school a little bit differently, like the Ministry of Education or and Science been reflecting. So ambitious goal was to bring this together into one puzzle that via our areas and criterion we would have indicators, we have a universal approach to quality assurance. So now our mission appeared that we are assuring joint understanding of the quality of education and quality of educational activity for the sake of the country and the child. Was it easy? Not. But here, in our history, in our deed, we had search project. Together with this project, we've gone through all the phases. It's not only products. The products, it was in the end. But in order to create these products, we discussed our mission, we discussed our vision, principles, and Mr. Nia said that we became the subject as organization. We became strong. We created territorial subdivision. We made outreach to people only through the way that we had a standpoint, and we sincerely been believing in this standpoint. We started to work over the work as ABCD for the principle. And sometimes we joke that each religion have gone its way, starting that they created its own book, sacred book or sacred writing. In our case of State Service of Quality Assurance of Education, it is ABCD for the principle. Do you support this? It came two iterations. Now we have already added, reflexed methodology, how to work in school in order to build our own internal system of quality assurance. It's not a panacea. Every school has the right to go its own way. All the time I was saying that the ABCD would not help to a weak school, and it's not needed for the strong school. But 80% of principals and school teams are left that are using this in order to really to be change themselves and to modernize their processes. So we are thinking now to start working over the third edition, and our gathering today is called up for to do this because in working groups we would like to sincerely talk about criteria, indicators, areas, to review what has been worked for these 5 years, something what has to be strengthened, and what should be said that something should be refused. So, and it's possible. So I call up everybody who will be working in working groups to be sincere, open, coming from the fact that we have today a war and many schools do not work because of security. They don't have even premises which was destroyed. And also I should say that sooner or later we will win and overcome the enemy. We will be living in a new system of Ukrainian education and quality. So you have to work on vision of the future and not what has been in the past. If you have the project, search, cooperation with the search project was embedded into many different monitoring sessions. Today we would like to say what monitoring been the best and where we can create the basis to continue these in many sessions. So the monitoring of educational losses of 7 and 8 forms have been, the input was for 3 years. So it was the first year that we did it. Now we have already full opinions and recommendations what each school should do in order to compensate these educational losses. But of course, this is a job to be done. There should be general concept of compensation of educational losses. We have to elaborate the models that today can be used by the teachers. And this is for us a big challenge and a big work. Good friends, trainings for the principals of schools on issues of inclusion. And we hope that our experts that are prepared, trained, they will be doing in future and implement these things in every school because a big job been done. I remember today about Mark Dombrovsky when we were the first institutional audits coming, and after the institutional audit, when the team's been working on opinions and recommendations, how vivid the debates and the discussions we had, how many time our experts been spending, in their opinion, what was good for the school, where we can strengthen the work. And I did like how the schools been reacting. It was sincere, open, a desire to become better. I remember the cases in Kiev Oblast when the head of community, a small community, was present 3 days during institutional audit because he was interested that the experts from the first words of mouth would say how this school works. And he was really concerned for the results of this institutional audit, that every day he was asking why, how come, what we do for the school, how we support the school. So I think that decentralization, which is unfortunately due to war, it was not implemented in full. It may give new quality to Ukrainian system of education. But do we have still challenges? Of course we have challenges. We need to work furthermore as civil servants to clearly understand that we still didn't create a feedback system about quality assurance policy in places. Sometimes we adopt very good first and secondary legislation, very good curriculum, but where is it implemented in school, indeed? And how this school is working with these educational policies? How the school can frequently use it to better the educational activity? This is feedback oblige us oblige us as state service of quality assurance of education to have this information, to bring it up from bottom to top to Parliament, Office of the President, Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. This is our duty. And through these instruments, which is flexible, which is not just face-to-face supervision of some task and state control supervision via the tools. These tools is different. It is flexible. And to see what is happening in the system of education. And second challenge, if in higher education, the universities already work long ago on the internal system of quality assurance in the school system, it is absolutely new and unclear sometimes task. Excuse me. This school didn't know how to start. They didn't know how to approach it. But in fact, the process is underway. And via our system evaluate the lion's share of school that are going through self-evaluation without our pressure and our goodwill. And this is what we dreamt of. We've been that system should be self-regulated, should be replenished with new senses and principles, and school teams would play themselves, and without expecting the instruction from the above. But we need to work very hard for that. Friends, whatever we say, but all the magic is done there in the school. All the magic is done when a teacher closes the door of the room and the lesson starts. But for the teacher, it is very necessary to create the medium, the environment, to become convenient. Of course, there are many challenges, and the issue of payroll and contents of education and load and educational programs, curriculums. These are the factors that impact on education very much, but we have to balance them to define the priorities. We are forced now to see where we are going and where our system going to. What is our target? What is our overall target? So today we will talk about it. And finally, well, until the end, we agreed, and our legislation, we have two approaches to evaluation of the work of a teacher. We have attestation, we have certification as well. One of these is mandatory, the other is goodwill procedure. In fact, going ahead, my vision in terms of certification that this procedure has justified itself. It worked well at the level of primary school, and now we transfer it to basic school and certification. Now the teachers of mathematics and Ukrainian language are going through this procedure. As for me, this is a unique tool to have an opportunity to increase the quality, but namely the instrument that will give opportunity to increase the payroll of the future, which is also very important. So the teacher sometimes wants to have an external evaluation, and it can have it, which is impartial, integral evaluation. And when he or she comes through the certification, he or she didn't know at all about it. So we think that that system that give the objective and evaluation now. But let us ask ourselves, do we need this evaluation? And how we can evaluate, and in what way we can evaluate the work of a teacher? Let's talk about this sincerely. And we can agree and implement the decision that would have the results for our system. Completing my thought, I'd like to say that all the tools that we did, they worked. They gave certain result. I think that at this panel discussion, you will be more able to discuss and tell to all the colleagues what has worked better, what in your opinion is priority, where we have to foster things. And now monitoring research and the issue of the development of our institutional audits. It will come back unconditionally. The priority number one, as the minister said, this is the priority to beat the enemy out of the country as soon as possible. This is priority one. But educational system, principal of the school, all school teams, communities should not forget about the duty which is invested into them to do all possible that the children would not lose the results of the education. They should become and would be formed as personalities, as future Ukrainians, and will be having opportunity and prosper in the future. Colleagues, I thank you to everybody. And I would like to thank the search project, all the projects that have been involved in the search team and today are with us. I'd like to thank Ms. Hanna Novosad, who heads this project as well and cooperate constantly with us. I'd like to thank Lena Zaplutinska. With her, we discuss a lot, and she is in our service, and even we allocated a room for her to come to us. Thank you, Ms. Alena. I thank you to all experts been involved in your team and work not only over ABCD, but the toolkit that we have today. Friends,
Неможливо було би
it would not be possible to implement everything, all of this, for the part of our establishment. Not so many years have passed when we created the State Service of Quality Assurance of Education, if not the territorial subdivision heads and the teams in regions. It is a big work and big force for to implement all this in Ukraine. You did incredible work, and we are thankful to you. And today, we have already, we are not thinking about this figure, but if you look how many experts work with us during institutional audit, certification, during inspections in high establishments facilities, the team of our state service numbers more than 5,000 people.
що це ціла військова бригада, яка сьогодні на фронті. І ми такою бригадою можемо далі продовжувати вести свій освітній фронт. Я впевнений, що маючи мотивацію, маючи добрий настрій і маючи волю це робити, у нас все вийде. У нас немає права не бути успішними. Ми зобов'язані це зробити во ім'я кожного учня, кожного студента, кожного слухача, який зараз навчається в Україні. І навіть ті діти, які вимушені були покинути
in Ukraine, and I am very sure that through the high-quality educational system, all children, school children, will be back to Ukraine. Thank you very much. We have closed up the session on welcoming remarks, and I would like to invite to the floor. This was the ex-minister of Education and Science of Ukraine, Mrs. Gana, and she will be moderating our panel discussion. Actually, our agenda has slightly changed. My name is Gana. Actually, I was in the 2090s the Minister of Education and Science. I was also the director of the program of the Search Quality Education program in Ukraine, and I worked with very many and worked with those who were very initiative in this process. And actually, now we actually recover the process in the communities that has lost the opportunity to have their classes. And colleagues, I will get to the stage, and actually, we had a sort of a difficult period, but for this panel, also we have expected some more guests, and very many changes have taken place, and also we have expected Olga Budnik. She is the advisor, ombudsman of the presidential office on the issues of the presidential fund in Ukraine in support of education, science, and sports. Mrs. Olga has informed me that she is on the way to our forum. And the point is that the MPs are not available currently because they work with the drafts of the projects. We understand that the draft budget is so critical. I understand that there are very many discussions in the parliament on this topic, but actually we have invited a line of MPs to this meeting, but we understand that they are very busy. And for us, it's important also to hear the inspiring words, not only for those who work in the educational sector in Ukraine, but also from those who develop the laws for this sector. And also it's important to work on some challenges at which we have already started our work. We understand how severe situation in the Mykolaiv region, and we understand that the profile of the regions in Ukraine is very different, and we understand that the reinstatement of the power and the recovery of the educational sector should be based on the different baselines. And for us, it's very important to understand what differences could be in place when we take this or that region. If we take Transcarpathian region, this region is in the western region of Ukraine. We understand that they encounter completely different problems and challenges. But we understand, if you take the Mykolaiv region, there we have a very complete situation because in their agenda, no doubt, they will have a completely different topics to be discussed. Because also we should give the full support for the returnees who get back, for example, to the Mykolaiv region, and all this support should be budgeted from the central budget. And we understand also that online classes, it's so critical issue that is also to be discussed, and we understand that for us it's very important to see different visions on the side as to the streamlining these processes. And actually, for us, it's very important to listen to each other and to hear to each other, because, you know, when we have the correct approaches, this will be the safeguard for the success of the process in general. And we understand that huge efforts were put by the state service of education quality in Ukraine. For us, it's also important to highlight such issues as quality issues and quality assurance in Ukraine.
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to the Education Quality Forum here in Kiev. During this horrible war against Ukraine, you might ask yourself, whether evaluating schools is the most important thing we can do right now in education. But actually, during crisis is when evaluation matters most to help students learn better, teachers teach better in schools to direct the resources where they matter most. In normal times, we know a lot about schools. In times of crisis, we need to better understand how we can support our schools best. And this has many different layers and perspectives. You can think of the student. How do we motivate students to learn during crisis? How do we capture not just their academic development, but also their social and emotional needs? How we can support that best? How can we support teachers to cope with challenges that go well beyond instruction? At this moment, teachers don't just need to be great instructors. They also need to be very good coaches, very good mentors, good facilitators, evaluators, creative designers of innovative learning environments, sometimes in bomb shelters. How do we look at schools, encouraging in their development, encouraging to pursue reforms when things get tough? And how do we look at the system overall? If you think about schools, inspectorates can help to get schools an understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, what they could learn from other schools, provide support. Schools can also, assess their own strengths and weaknesses through self-evaluation within a meaningful framework that can be provided by the education systems. And also through performance measures. What are the results achieved for different student groups? Teacher appraisal is important. How do we identify the strengths of teachers? How do we support teachers in their career development? How do you recognize excellence in teaching and make it visible throughout the system? Often education systems are good, to push knowledge top down into systems, but how do we find the best experiences in classrooms, and how do we scale and spread and share them? That is very much about evaluation. And then, of course, at the student level, how do we assess learning in the classroom in a formative way, and at the same time also look at this from outside the classroom to understand how schools and how systems perform? I show you an example from the International PISA assessment. The length of the bar in these charts shows you the variability in student performance, and I divided this into two components. The yellow bar shows you the performance variability among schools. The larger that bar, you can see the bigger the difference between high and low performing schools. The gray bar shows you the variability of student performance inside schools. How does the performance of students differ inside the school? You can see here on the left side, in Finland, only about 5% of the performance variation lies between schools. Every school is a successful school. It's an incredible outcome of evaluation of an education system that is very transparent, where the system understands the strengths and weaknesses of schools, and where the system is capable to intervene in inverse in proportion to success. At the other extreme, you can find Israel, where there is huge variability in school performance. Some high-performing schools, some low-performing schools, and the system has not been really good in, countering that disparity. Evaluation can tell us something about this. I want to show you the example of Brazil. On the vertical axis, you see the performance of schools in terms of academic outcomes. The larger the dot, the bigger the school. The smaller the dot, the smaller the school. On the horizontal axis, you see a measure of the social and economic background of students in schools. On the right side, students are in wealthy neighborhoods. On the left side, students are in poor neighborhoods. The blue dots are the private schools, the gray dots are the public schools. And it looks, blue dots provide, private schools provide better results than public schools. But, once you take into account the social context of schools, actually, there's not much of a difference between public and private schools. In fact, you can see within every group of socioeconomic context, you can see some schools that are doing really well and others that struggle. Schools that we can call statistical neighbors, schools with similar results, showing very different performance. School evaluation can help us understand what makes some of those schools successful. What can we learn to improve others? So that's the example of Brazil. And many Brazilians would say, well, you know, poverty is destiny. If you are from a poor kind of neighborhood, you just get lower results than if you come from a wealthier background. And many people in Ukraine would say something similar. But now compare Brazil with Vietnam. Here you can see the Vietnamese schools are even more on the left side of the chart. They operate in even more disadvantaged circumstances, but the results are very good. And that shows us poverty is not destiny. And that can tell us, you know, the comparative perspective can tell us, well, under similar circumstances, we can achieve better results. So that's really important. Evaluation can also tell us something about the effectiveness of resource use. On this chart, you can see on the vertical axis, again, the academic performance of a country, and on the horizontal axis, how much money does a country spend up to the age of 15 when we assess the students in school. And when you look at the performance, you can see Ukraine, you know, still has a way to go to reach the highest performing countries, but it's also a country that spends the least per student. And actually, if you look at the results achieved in relation to the spending, Ukraine does quite well. It is above the regression line now. You look at the United States, it has better results, but actually it also spends a lot now. Estonia is an interesting example. Performs better than the United States, one of the highest performing education systems, and still doesn't spend that much. And that shows us really that money is important, but money is not everything. It often has to do with how do we utilize those resources. And that's really where school evaluation becomes very important. Schools have to think about how we configure the spaces, the people, the time, the technology, the relationships. How do we prioritize the quality of teaching? How do we support teachers well? How do we build that professional autonomy and that collaborative culture that help teachers, you know, shape the profession? Utilization of resources is where school evaluation becomes so important. But I want to, you know, make one more point, that it's not just about academic success. Another finding from our PISA survey shows that actually mindset can matter a lot. On the vertical axis, you see again the academic success of an education system. On the horizontal axis, you see the share of students with a growth mindset. On the right side, you can see a country like Estonia, where students believe the sky is the limit to success. Now, if I try hard, I know my teacher is going to help me and I'm going to be successful. And you can see Estonian students are also academically very good. On the left side, you can see a country like Indonesia, where students often believe, well, you know, it's all about the intelligence I was born with. There's nothing I can do. And you can see actually students struggle academically. Now, mindset and academic success are not opposing ends on a spectrum that compete for learning time. No, they are two sides of the very same coin. And that really shows us that through school evaluation, we need to encourage both the academic development, but also the social and emotional development of students. Provide good signals to students to understand to what extent they succeed, to develop the right mindset. Think about the pedagogies that help, you know, be supportive for meaningful student development. And it's not just about academic success. You know, we could see that students with a growth mindset were more motivated to master difficult tasks. They had a greater sense of self-efficacy. They were less afraid of failure. And think about this. If you want your students to be imaginative and creative, you have to give them space to experiment. If they experiment, they take risk. If they take risk, they make mistakes. If our education systems are not very good to help students learn from and with mistakes, maybe they will not be so creative. Again, school evaluation can look at those perspectives. What kind of learning environments will help students to develop, you know, a good sense of themselves, to collaborate with others, to live with this planet? That's really the power of this. And one last aspect, you know, particularly in a time of war, we should never forget about the well-being of students. We surveyed that in our survey on social emotional skills, and we could see when you ask 10-year-olds, most 10-year-olds are happy children. You can see here they say, my daily life is filled with things that interest me, or I woke up fresh and rested. I felt active and vigorous. Now, at least, a good 2/3 of students say so. But when you ask those very same question at the age of 15, you can see how these bars get much shorter, particularly among girls. Now, the well-being of students dips as students grow older. Now, well, that's something that school evaluation should tell us about. Now, of course, developmental psychologists will say there are many explanations for this, but teachers and school at least need to understand those dynamics now. So we ask ourselves, what are those key drivers of student well-being now? What differentiates students with a strong sense of well-being from those that feel less well? And the answer was quite consistent across the different regions for which we have data. It all was about stress resistance, optimism, and energy that students felt. And now you will ask me, well, what does that have to do with school evaluation? A lot. Because the key drivers of students' energy, stress resistance, optimism, had to do with the quality of student-teacher relationships. Students always learn best from teachers they love. And that's really what evaluation in school needs to be encompassing. How can we build an environment in which teachers feel confident, in which they build positive and supportive relationships with their students, in which they have the time to know not just their subjects, but also to know their students, to understand who their students are, who they want to become, and how to be successful. And it's not just about student well-being in the narrow sense. We could see that the quality of student-teacher relationship was also a strong predictor for a student's sense of responsibility, for their persistence, for their self-control, for their empathy, for their trust, for their cooperation, for their tolerance, for their curiosity, for their creativity, for their self-efficacy, for their achievement motivation. We need to get a good understanding of what kind of environments help students learn best. What environments help students to develop the cognitive, social, and emotional skills that prepare them for their future, not just our past. How can we support our teachers in ways that develop those learning environments? How can we build that collaborative culture and enable teachers to take responsibilities for the design of innovative learning environments? And what can schools do to, again, assemble the resources and deploy them where they can best use? Well, the answers to all of this you find in meaningful and good school evaluation. Evaluation that helps students learn better, teachers teach better, and schools to learn from and with each other what makes a strong education system. Thank you very much.
Ми дуже вдячні Андресу, що він записав це звернення. Так, він вас не чує, але ми йому передамо. Насправді він його записав спеціально для цього заходу. І я помітила, що де в кого не було навушників, можливо, хтось не зрозумів. Ми зі свого боку перекладемо це звернення, зробимо титри українською і розійшлемо вам. На мою думку, там надзвичайно багато інсайтів і думок, які, по-перше, переконають ще раз вас в тому, що ви робите дуже важливу справу з точки зору оцінювання якості освітньої діяльності, як в територіальних підрозділах Державної служби якості освіти, так і в закладах освіти, які займаються, власне, самооцінюванням і впроваджують внутрішні практики забезпечення якості. І що дуже цікаво, як на мене, це приклади, які він там наводив, ось ці графіки. Їх треба трішки більше часу, щоб розгледіти, але дуже цікаво, де там є Україна. Та? От ви могли побачити, що Ізраїль – та країна, яка в нашому світі це номер один з точки зору інновацій, так і є. Але якщо подивитися на рівність у якості між закладами освіти, вона фактично остання з кінця. Так? Тому що школи дуже різні. Є найгірші і є найкращі, і між ними прірва. А ми б мали прагнути до того, що є у Фінляндії. І інший аспект – знаєте, дуже смішно, погодьтеся, коли щороку публікують списки кращих шкіл за НМТ чи ЗНО раніше. Тому що це не має нічого спільного з якістю освіти як такою. А спільне має те, що показував Андреас. Це довіра, це оптимізм, це те, що називається well-being, відчуття учнів і учениць, відчуття власного задоволення від освітнього процесу. І це все те, що не міряє ЗНО чи НМТ, а це все те, що показує оцінювання якості. З нами є ще одна експертка, міжнародна експертка, яка працювала з державною службою, Деб Мастерс.
And she presents. We will have another speaker. She will speak English. Чи добре ви нас чуєте? Do you hear us? Ми не чуємо. We don't hear our speaker. Так, так.
Speaking.
Yep, we just did.
We hear you. Так,
Just the connection is
we
really
hear you.
Okay, begin.
okay. Deb, we know you have a presentation, and we would like to talk with you about the evaluation of teachers. Because teachers are actually those who are the cornerstone, the key to any success of schools, of a single child, and of a system at large. So what, in your opinion,
Яка ваша думка щодо впливу на роботу вчителів? Що може зробити держава для того, щоб покращити поточну ситуацію? Well, let's read. It will be the evening, and we will have technical group, technical team. If it will be back, we will all of them. We will go back. Ruslan, let's go back to you. And the question is a key question, which is interesting to this audience: territorial subdivision of state service. What is the future of institutional audit? This is what is indicated in all documents, key documents of service. What Andrei said also, how do you see the opportunity of its return? And the question, sub-question, the service together that during the COVID, the institutional audit is necessary to adapt to the circumstances. Can you adapt to the circumstances of war and different situations? Thank you, Anya. Very good question. First, what is dealing about institutional audit? It's not a panacea. The main thing, this is the result that the institutional audit shows and how we work with this reliance. So it's important. What we are going to do after, we talked with the Schleicher, Andreas. If it is done, this audit on the basis of 300 schools. So the capacity from 500 to 700 institutional audits in Ukraine. In majority of audits, the toolkit, this is a question, principal, parents, school children, how do they feel in the school, what is main thing, how to better, what is the situation with bullying, with academic integrity, etc., etc. All of this is envisioned in our toolkit. Firstly, I think that important is very important for the present day, and we need to recover it as soon as possible. And secondly, for the war, of course, where we have active hostilities, we should not remember about that and give opportunity to work there as they work. But where the security is more or less controlled, I'm sure we have to do it. In terms of the Ministry of Education, we took this issue with the Minister and the Deputy Minister Andrei Stashki. We have approval to have few institutional audits. Why it is suspended? Because we have moratorium on actions of state supervision and control as long as our institutional audit is related, and we were forced to relate it with the state supervision control. That is why we also are having a moratorium. Can we adapt and adapt toolkit? Yes, of course, it's possible. It's easy. And our specialists can do it simply and fast. So thank you for important question. I'm convinced that we need to recover, except that on the meetings with Mikhailo Fedorov, Minister of Digitalization Transformation, when we discussed the pilot project of payroll of teachers and principals, one of the idea was to have 500 teachers in schools that can participate in this pilot. So there is a procedure, there is a toolkit, there is capacity, experts, we need to move forward. And the audit during the war shows its result during the war. So when the school been decided whether to have education online or not, if they would know that there will be institutional audit, they started to work immediately and to have offline education at a very good level. So I think we have a lot of opportunities, we need to do it. There are a few addresses to the service of the ministry to have these audits, and Ministry of Education and Science gave only one permit to have status of scientific lyceum. What is the logic? I'm lacking it. Ruslan, I would like to ask you, what are your evidences to Vice Prime Minister Fedorov to return an institutional audit? Because it is perceived as a certain inspection, and some people are afraid of it, and they provide the air of aggressiveness. So what are the points I used in order to designate now? Of course, we have certain negative experience of cooperation with the state institutions when they come to you as guests and say, let us supervise something. I don't see that there were no many smiling faces or well verify us, the inspectors. It's true that there is no that is historical thing. When some inspection comes, they may find something bad and form the opinion. In fact, the school's principals and committees that they know about the toolkit of institutional audit, and they know about the opinions and recommendations that can be as a result, they should not be convinced. We have principals that agreed on institutional audit because they've been pursuing their own goal. They wanted to have something related them from externally. Secondly, they needed this institutional audit because they then would come to session of a community council and say, look, we don't have this and this to create quality environment, or we really need these things badly. So these 2 points, they are very important. So all who understand our toolkit, criteria indicators, they are not afraid of it, and even they are interested in the fact that we should work. We have more of 40, 50 addresses now that their schools and communities, they are asking for extra planned audits. Ms. Irina, she's a director of Lyceum of Ivan Kali in town of Kyiv. This is one of progressive facilities of education, and it is independently implements innovations, not waiting for some policies. Town of Lviv, and during the war, experiences a lot of shelling, and this town goes offline. In this town, there is a big challenge. the majority of people that move to Lviv. This is another story rather than in Kharkiv or in Mykolaiv, where we have 100% online pupils. A bit of a little situation, Ms. Irina, and that in fact we have second education year when the external evaluation system is at a pit stop. The director of the facility, what are the policies that you have and how do you envision this for future? It's important to talk about this principle because Andras is talking every time about this. All innovations are born in schools, and we just need for better to select these innovations. Hello, as a principal of education facility, we have full autonomy, and Town Olive is an example where we have full autonomy in terms of all tracks of work. We have to remember one thing, that our child should be taught and developed, and we need to create a good environment for it, a safe environment, psychological environment, the one where a child would trust us, parents. This is a main chain which we have to work well in order to return their trust to us. Since 2 years of quarantine and half year where we had education in the wartime conditions, we don't have physical, but in terms of moral, it is reflected on everybody. It, of course, this cooperation with the state service of education quality assurance prompts us, streamlines us, and help us. We don't forget about the evaluate system, which gives opportunity to the principal where these white spots we have, these gaps, how to make a monitoring, how to work today with curriculums, how to integrate the topic of a subject. Lviv is, I love it. It's very convenient to work with our employers and founder there because we have a good support and working on educational losses, these compensatory actions that can be done today for our children. It is dependent on the conditions in order to catch up them through the track of the work. These are museum lessons, scientific museums. Today, a great deal of attention is paid to the nature track, learning track. Security conditions, these are that today every head of facility takes responsibility on himself. To what extent they are created, to what extent the teacher is ready to be stress resilient in such conditions, and how he can provide a child the aid of any kind. Also, we are going through the first pre-medical aid, all the principal facilities, all the teachers. And the main thing, if you talk about today about the quality of education, we have to say about curricula, quality of manuals, which is number one for today. The question of manuals, but still we are a little bit going beyond the manuals. We work with Mozabook programs where we create individual group programs for children according to their level. And together, in synergy with the Ministry of Education, we have our own Ministry. This is a Department of Education. This is a Center of Professional Development. We have a unique opportunity to elaborate our own model program of town of Lviv and Oblast, which would be fitting to our child, which would give an opportunity to a child to understand how he or she should learn during the year. Monitoring, of course. Tremendous feedback with parents. Today, we understand that the category of our parents doesn't answer what is the new Ukrainian school mean, what is the standard, doesn't understand that a child doesn't have math and learning and exploration activity. The track that we have to work with, that this monitoring of quality of conduction of lessons or evaluation, it should be in reality and should be pragmatic to present day, that we should understand the request of parents where we have to better our track.
Що все-таки, знаєте, майнд
If to generalize, mind back, what are the elements of your construction to internally assure quality of education in your lyceum, and whether you added something or when the Great War started in Lviv, it became differently. First of all, today it's a secure environment. And presently, as we could unload a child physically, being in adolescence in schools, and to what extent we could integrate the subject between each other, and the integration today, the topics for subjects. In fact, we know unique experience as to full-day school. Today we are piloting, and my facility, together with the colleagues, we pilot the sixth form of study, first six forms of study work as full-day school. We elaborated the calendar planning, where we have seen how we can integrate the topic for that or another sector, that the child should accept it and to reduce the load. Also, we are working on compensatory actions, how to return to a child what he or she lost.
долучити до розмови Ольгу Будник. Ольга є радницею президента, уповноваженою з питань фонду.
Presidential office, and she is actually has a revived breath because you have been meeting the president very often, participated in different discussions on educational issues. You understand also what is being included in the agenda of the first figures. For us, it's important to understand what are the components and elements for securing the education quality in this country, and actually what plans you have in mind, at least to get to the level as it was before the war. I see that we have a very esteemed community here, and we understand that education quality is priority number one. And it means that all these should be secured at the level of the educational facility. And for us, it's very important to understand whether we could provide for the quality of education having the online mode. Because we understand whether we could supply our disciplines with the content we needed to be transferred to the students. So that's why also very important to understand how we ensure the secure educational environment. We understand that certain countries have certain relevant experience because, for example, Israel, actually they lived in these circumstances very close to Ukraine, but the scale of problems is slightly different when we compare these two countries. And for us, it's very important, actually, we have a sort of a request to sort out such issues, how we should form up the discipline. We understand also there is a certain psych and mental related issues that should be also in focus. We understand because we understand that there is a so-called security and physical security. And these two issues go hand by hand. And very many people say that it is necessary to secure by 100% the physical security. But here we see two components. When we started thinking how actually we could address and resolve these issues, we understand that also in your focus, and you put very intense efforts on the recovery of the educational process. Also, secure environment, also very critical. It means that all the actors in the educational process should have a clear vision what they should do. And we have the multiple discussions on this topic, and because very often, mainly the focus was on the quality of education. Actually, oversight, who will provide this oversight, and how performance to be evaluated. Actually, for us, it's important to get a recommendation what is to be done. And then if I'm a principal, for example, then I should actually understand whether I should process these recommendations on my own, or it should be delivered from outside, from the responsible authority. We understand also that certain changes in the management are required because for us it's important to provide for not only system-based support, but also the system-based oversight. And we understand also that there is a certain specific features in the students' behavior. And if we, for example, actually take together all these factors, we understand that very often not only teachers but students, they subject to different stressors. That's why we should understand also in full what are actually the factors that fully impact this the process of education quality assessment. For us, it's also very important if you have identified this or that problem or gap, it's necessary to have in place the referral system. If, for example, when you understand that you cannot cope with this or that problem, the referral system will strengthen the process, and you will invite to the process proficient people. And actually, for us, it's very important to rethink actually the current situation and to add up both the new instruments, the new visions, and to have the atmosphere of trust when all the actors of this process will feel secure. will have the full trust. And for us, it's important to understand the students should feel free, a sort of a freedom when they go to school, because they will realize that in the school environment they will be secure. So for us, it's very important to understand what a clear algorithm for action will be in place. It will be a real help for the process. The stresses situations, we encounter them on a day-to-day basis. And we understand all these trainings that could be delivered on these topics, they should be in the interactive mode, because we understand that very many issues are multidisciplinary issues, and this vision actually allowed us to a certain extent to change the approaches to the inspections and audits. And when we have the fully fledged system of the support in the framework of the educational system, then we could take over and say that we have implemented all these tasks that we posed. Mr. Schleicher spoke a lot on the issues that we should provide for the comfortable being of students at school. And, lots of issues arise with the deoccupied communities. It is in Mykolaiv region, in Kharkiv region. Katuzhonka was deoccupied in late March last year. And actually, very many people who stayed in occupation, actually, they were subject to shelling. Very many of their countrymen were shot in the street, and they witnessed all this. And actually, you see the environment that was under occupation, it actually produced a number of stresses. So for us, it's very important what actually approaches will be in place when we speak about the deoccupied territories and the process of reinstating the educational processes. We understand that also lots of feedback we obtain through the Telegram channels, and we have a feeling that that there is a certain level of trust on behalf of students. And I don't criticize the efforts of the psychologists that we have in these or that localities, but for me, it's difficult to even imagine in what status and in what shape are children in Snegurivka that was under occupation more than once. So the occupied territories, no doubt, they manifest completely different situations. You know, both the educators and children, they did not used to such an environment. And for us, it's very important what can be done in place with regard taking for the real situation. What instruments could be used in order to build up and to recover the smart new system. This new smart system is working today. And for us, it's important to understand who actually will provide this support for us, psychological support. It's so critical. And we understand that psychologists who work at school, for us, it's important to have them engaged timely. And the reason is that sometimes we speak on non-availability of such staff at schools. That's why the system of referrals is so critical. And it's necessary to to engage these people, because we don't want to have the situation when we post psychologists to this or that locality, they stay there of a certain time and then leave this area and they don't stay there. We should understand that, different localities that have been deoccupied, many communities also could be very much interested in empowerment of these processes. And that's why for us, assessment of quality assessment, assessment of performance will be really a helper to the process. Also, the focus is placed on such issues that definitely psychological support is critical, but we should be aware on the scale of the problem, because when we realize what is the scale of this problem, then we will have a better understanding how we'll deploy these or that capacities. The point is that the level of trauma and the scale of the people who got this trauma is critical. And when we see the scale, this will allow us to recover.
In March, when we saw this problem in April of last year, and in our opinion, there was the question which more open to teachers rather than children in those regions which were not occupied. There was a lot of stress amongst teachers. They could not start the educational process, and we started project with other partners, with SQEua Academy. There is Institute of Psychology, there is SQEua and Bogdanov. We implemented the project first to support the teachers, and that the teachers should provide primary aid or detect the problems of children in their classes online or offline in school. Because there is a question in mental health. We should differentiate two approaches. First, to detect the problem, and secondly, to work with it, to start working with it. In order to work with it, we need to have a systemic work and professional work. So it's not an easy challenge, and our quality service, we worked a year with this project. I even don't remember how many teachers gone through this training, but the main thing was that the need in data education was quite high. The teachers asked to continue the education because they felt that they needed these primary skills, and how the first step to perform a small therapy within the framework of the class for a child to continue, because all our researchers show that this psychological stress impacted a lot on the results of education. Motivation of children reduced with COVID period on 30-40%. So if the motivation was among 30-40%, it was reduced to 70%. No motivation to learn independently. Ruslan. And finally, to close this conversation, it's bad that there are no member of parliaments and the ministry, because the service cannot do all and lobby all. It's a teamwork, but for understanding of colleagues, territorial subdivisions. What are the 3 or 4 key priorities during this educational era in terms of quality assurance? Few things you, as a head of a service, you would like to plan to lobby in front of the ministry office and power to assure quality. Thank you. One example. Recently, I have been in military unit Desna, and there is a school there. We made a visit to this school with principal, territorial subdivision. They don't have offline, but it was summer only online education. But there is one room where children frequently coming and coming. There is constant request. This is the cabinet of which was provided by charitable fund, evaluated and design, and class was refurbished, etc. What does it mean? That first, what we should work on, this is to renew the education or offline daytime educational process and to convince schools in different ways that online, offline, this is the process where the people may socialize, teachers both and school children. It will be easier for them to work online or each time to come to the school. And here we have to push this system from our side, but this is our mission, the main thing, what is the priority first. Sooner or later we will return back to the institutional audits, external evaluation of schools, but now the focus on self-evaluation. We show toolkit to provide this process, how they can themselves help to themselves, not waiting for our state service of quality of education quality assurance, and at the committee of the Parliament with colleagues with the Office of the President and Ministry of Education, we will have a full report on educational losses. We don't want to talk into this topic. If this problem will not be resolved, there is no sense to work and to move forward because we will put our children into a bigger educational abyss, and to show them how the education environment should be, because this environment is not only bomb shelter, it is questions of bullying, and we've seen the signs only for the last week. We have not been showing at our web page, not to popularize this phenomenon. What has been in Lviv, done in Rivne, and yesterday our colleagues been in that school. They have been seen made oversight, prevention of bullying, whether they know about this, how they work with this, and war also sharpened these things. So we are continuing to work with this environment, with educational losses. We are going our monitoring, and they show the status of the issue. And for this year, we have the ambitious goal to complete certification of teachers of Ukrainian language and math, and to show what are the challenges in the work in our educational system. Thank you. We understand what is the purpose of the service and plan your work, and you can continue to work this in sessions that we will be after coffee break. So, thank you, and in the end of educational year to meet again and to talk about, discuss these 4 priorities of the service. Thank you.
Аня слушно запитала.
The question was correct that to the Ministry of Parliament, Office of the President, I would like to say that we meet at different platforms together with the MPs, head of the committee. Yesterday I talked with Sergei Babak. He passed his greetings. He is ready all the time to support all the deliberations that we will do. So we had good communication with Ministry of Education, with the minister. Sometimes we lack some time to talk more about this, but I think that we will find this time. We will continue our cooperation. Thank you. Oля and Irina. Thank you to speakers, esteemed participants of forum. Now we have half an hour for the